All right. Well, welcome to today's Tech School. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about the upcoming month with the San Diego Startup Month. So it's super exciting. We'll get some questions and answers session with Curling today. It's going to be, I think, an exciting month of things to learn and ways to network and connect. So I'm excited for it. So I'll let Stephen do some quick reminders for those people joining us online.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam. Yeah, just as a quick reminder to those of you tuning in, especially on YouTube, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. All those interactions that we get on videos like this help push it out to more people and improve our reach. So that like or that comment that you leave, sharing your thoughts or giving us, that thumbs up, could push this video out to somebody who needs to hear it, right? Or somebody who might gain a lot from, being part of the events at San Diego Startup Month. So just wanted to throw that reminder out to everyone listening, and I'll hand it over to Curling.
Good. Thanks. I actually, I'm still thinking about the cohort. Like I have all these, some feedback for the cohort. We usually before tech school, we try to do like a kind of cohort meeting to get everybody moving forward on everything. And this is one thing. There's a group that Google used to do. I think they actually own it now or something like that. But there's all these kind of startup groups, and I'll think of the name in a minute. But they have these kind of three things they always say when you go into their conferences. This is just for founders. One is like to give and not take. I think that was like a really great one. When you walk in as a founder, you see other founders. Let's try to give some of our time, our feedback. And I like our current cohort, because they have that kind of mentality. The other one was like make friends, not contacts. I think that's actually really great. And this is aspect of that when you're with startups, is always this kind of competition aspect, right? That, okay, certain people are getting funding from there, or Series A or Series B. And I've never thought about that even growing up, or being with other founders when I was a little curling, right? I would see that going on, but I always felt in some ways that the people, even in your competition, you can become best friends in some ways, right? I had a couple mergers too, and acquisitions that happened where people were competitions, but they became my best friends because they were really brilliant and they were doing similar things that I had to do. So I start off by saying things like that, just for the fact that reason why Fokcus is part of this kind of Startup San Diego, right, or Startup Month, but the organization is Startup San Diego, is that I'm trying to create more community, a friendly community that people can kind of go or talk, and especially when they actually are like solopreneurs, or they're women, or they're veterans, other groups that usually don't start companies, that they can actually get some support. So this kind of Startup Month, which is fairly new, and I'll share out my screen, is interesting to me, just for the fact that we're doing everything virtual. I personally feel, this is me, I'm an engineer, Stephen can attest to some of that parts. I'd rather be in a lab than being in front of a camera or being out in the field, right? And so things like Startup Month, all that stuff, and you see this picture that I'm showing, that's not really curling right there. I'd rather be probably behind the scenes or doing something like that. But that is somewhat what I'm trying to, I guess, preach, is this kind of join a certain community. Now, there's all these type of communities. I know, Trippy, like you're in San Francisco, there's totally a community up there, right? I know maybe you're back east, there's a community out there. I think whatever community you're in, try to join it, right? We were learning a lot of stuff by creating Startup Month, and they had Startup Month in Detroit. We were learning about Startup Month in Austin. There was all these really great communities that I've been learning about just to actually create this Startup Month. And it was actually just really, but one thing is I'm showing pretty much the website. It's startupsd.org. It's Startup San Diego is the organization that Fokcus is a nonprofit, but we're part of the board. But they have other events that go on throughout the year. They have like First Mondays for founders. They have all these other programs. We'll talk a little bit about that, about Startup Month. And they have all these resources, right? And then some of the resources I actually feel like are really great. Even if I click on resources, I'll go into that maybe later. But the main thing is actually this page, if you're in San Diego, is great. But I even feel like some of the stuff, since it's all virtual now, you guys could actually just join it even from anywhere else, right? So one thing I would want you guys just to know, or just to understand, is that this is a good community that Fokcus is part of. So I'm trying to make the communities that we're part of pretty authentic. So this is one piece. What I've been trying to somewhat promote in a lot of ways is some of the stuff that they promote. You can see education, facilitating, fostering, growth. Those are some of the things that we teach, but this is actually a more scalable model for community. It's actually being part of this. So that's why Fokcus is part of this. Startup Month, which starts tonight. It's actually in some ways a derivative of Startup Week. Stephen will talk a little bit later. He spoke last year at Startup Week. I spoke. Everyone at Fokcus spoke. I think Sam was part of like certain panels and things of that nature. What Startup Week, in a lot of ways, is pretty much just a community getting together and each one teaching each one, right? So founder teaching founder, right? Now, most of the time, they have these kind of tracks, and you'll see some of these tracks that we have, like design, program, and things. But most of the time, when I'm going through it, I look at speakers or people who I maybe admire or want to just know what their thought process is. So I'll go into a design one, even though I'm an engineer. I'll actually go into a sales one just because of that speaker offhand, right? So that's kind of like how I've always used Startup Week. And after I went to Startup Week once, the next year I spoke there, right? And I think that might be good for you guys, for all, especially our cohort or other people out there. Actually feel like after just a few months being a founder, there is something you can speak about, right? I feel like that's crucial on that part. But just putting it out there, I feel like each one of the people in the cohort could speak possibly next year on this. This is actually going to be the opening day. It's a kickoff that starts at 4. I'll give you like a little preview why I feel like certain things like kickoffs are good. Just for the fact that when we were looking at, actually there's a little. Let me see if I could do that again if it works. But the one thing why I actually feel like it's a good something right there. I'll show you what the kickoff looks like in my other one. But why I feel like the kickoff works great for you guys, and I'll switch to my other slide, is that the people who are involved in the kickoff, even if you guys are not in San Diego, Neil Bloom, who's going to be doing opening, he's kind of like the chair of our board, but he's involved in so many things across the country. I just feel like you guys should understand how Neil thinks, and later on we can do some kind of introduction. I'll probably have some of these speakers that are on Startup Month come on Tech School, right? So if you don't catch everyone, I'm actually trying to figure out certain ways where I can get definitely Neil, of course, people like Lolita, Alexa Ray, some of those people who will speak, just so you can see their mentality on how they think about startups. Some of them have been startups themselves. So we are trying to have it where people that speak to people on Tech School or in general maybe have some experience in us creating a startup. And I think that's one of the key things. So kickoff, Neil's going to be doing. We have some other people, part of San Diego, going to be talking. Lolita was the person I was telling the cohort, because Lolita was one of the people that I spoke to before. She actually helped a lot of women founders. She's actually part of, and I'm not mistaken, Backstage Capital. One thing about Backstage Capital is there's pretty much a new VC fund a couple of years ago that was just for women. And they were very focused on maybe African-American women and things of that nature, right? But Lolita actually now is kind of co-founder of this kind of community fund, which is amazing. I know Lolita's kind of mentality on helping different groups and stuff like that. So it's just good to think about when you want to approach someone or want to understand a little bit how you approach one. It's kind of good to hear them speaking or even ask questions and things of that nature. There's also going to be a fireside chat today with Andy. He's actually, I don't know how many people have heard of GoFundMe, but a lot of groups have used GoFundMe to do all types of charity. It was based in San Diego. So Andy's going to be speaking tonight. Barry, kind of part of this social impact accelerator that's in some ways powered by Techstars. So you guys don't know, Techstars, Y Combinator, 500 Startups are one of the bigger accelerators that we would want most of our cohorts to go to. This funding involved. There's also more mentorship. And usually there's a way that at the end of your kind of run there, it's usually about 90 days, you guys have a demo day and you can expose to more investors and stuff like that. So just good to understand what Barry, a managing director, thinks about when he's looking at startups. There's also going to be kind of these kind of virtual parties. We'll talk about more about that. And there's going to be this kind of panel. The one great person on this panel, his name is Ryan Cougar. He's actually the head of Techstars. And so Techstars anywhere, doesn't matter if you're in San Francisco, Baltimore, you can all apply to Ryan's program. So it's just good to think how he actually thinks. And we actually have some other people that are, I guess they're kind of like these startups that are going to be part of the panel. And this Verbella is the one I'm going to kind of end off by saying is actually, we're going to try to mimic a little bit what Startup Week used to be, where everyone could be in the plaza and you can bump into another founder. So we're going to have this kind of virtual party using Verbella. So it's going to be pretty interesting this year what this kind of looks like. Last thing I'll talk about is our incubator program. I think for our cohort, I told them to apply. We're going to do 10. Fokcus is going to be a little bit behind the scenes on that, giving credits and stuff like that. But there's going to be sessions from Brant, from Ryan, some legal sessions from Cooley, some banking funding ones from Eric, Andy. Some of these guys are on my board, or on the board that I sit on with startup. But I think this is going to be very interesting just to see what this looks like, because I think it's going to be all virtual. It's going to be like a new way we can bring in more founders, people that maybe not in San Diego to come in. So I'm excited about it, and we're going to help with that part. And lastly, we're going to have things like this kind of pitch competitions. This is going to be October 9th. I've been telling the cohort too about this 30 seconds is needed. It's going to be a little bit longer than the 30 seconds, but it will have people like Caitlin there from Tech Coast Angels. Tech Coast Angels is one of the largest kind of syndicate angels out there. And if you guys don't know exactly what an angel is, usually it's just think of an investor, but they have in some ways a more, when I think about some of my friends who are angels, I actually feel like they do get involved a little bit more in your startup. Definitely VCs are a little different, but this Tech Coast Angels has been very helpful for most of our founders in San Diego. And so they're going to be part of this kind of pitch competition. So even if you're not part of pitch competition, just seeing how they judge, how they actually go about looking at what is going to be a viable product or a viable founder. So these are some of the reasons why I wanted to do the Q&A. I told Steve, I'm trying to just keep it down to 10 minutes, right? So I hope that I got most of these things down. But I think the one thing I would want you guys just to understand is that it starts today. I know for the Cal State San Marcos group, they're all going to be going. There's going to be some sponsorship there. Sam can talk more about what that looks like. But for everyone else, I think it's going to be a really good month for other people who are not from San Diego to get exposed to our community. But two, a lot of speakers here are funding groups or actually helping groups all across the nation. So that's part of it. I did want to end by actually just saying offhand with Stephen is that, Stephen, you spoke last week. I mean, you spoke last year at San Diego Startup Week, right? And for everyone out there and for our cohort, I did want you to kind of talk a little bit what you maybe spoke about, but what they can expect from a speaker at some of these sessions. Is that fine, Stephen?
Yeah, that's fine. Sorry, I had to find the unmute button.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, just to give everyone listening kind of an overview or a little taste of what to expect, especially if you've never experienced, San Diego Startup Week or Startup Month before. So Curling and I had a great experience of being speakers last year, right? Curling was part of a panel along with Joanna, and he had a great experience with that. And then myself, I did a talk on a more technical topic. So one of the cool things about San Diego Startup Week and now Startup Month is the format they're having it this year, is they try to make it as easy as possible for startup founders, entrepreneurs, people who want to just to dive in and check things out, to make it easy for them to find a direction to go or find what they're looking for if they have some sort of preconceived notion coming into it. So they have a lot of tracks. And what I mean by tracks is they will kind of put a lot of the talks and sessions into buckets based on some sort of central theme. So tracks that they have this year consist of like, customer and data design, developer track. There's a founder track where you have founders share a lot of experience and knowledge, marketing, sales, things like that, right? So if you have this preconceived notion or some idea of what you want to get out of this event beforehand, you have a track to check out, right? And so you can, check out all the talks related to that track. Now, last year, the talk that I gave was more on a technical topic. So with Fokcus, we do use a lot of AI, machine learning. And so I gave a talk just about, leveraging AI and machine learning in today's kind of startup world, right? And this wasn't, a lot of those talks that kind of dive into more technical topics like this aren't, I guess, super technical, where you have to know the lingo and have a lot of experience just to understand what it talks about. A lot of them are geared towards, okay, if you walk in and have no knowledge of, let's say for this one, machine learning, could you walk in and get something out of it, right? And so a lot of the speakers, tailor it that way, just for the benefit of those listening in. So to give you an example, the talk that I gave, we talked about the history of machine learning, AI, and then dove into if you were, what kind of problems you could if you were facing in your startup or business, that you could leverage something like AI machine learning and what that would look like to be able to solve those problems and actually use those solutions to your benefit. So there's a lot of interesting talks, a lot of great speakers, sharing their experience. As Curling would probably attest to in events like this, just the same way. Let's say if you're a founder or you're an entrepreneur, and maybe you read books, maybe you check up on podcasts, things like that. This is another way that you could dive into Startup Month, and if there is an idea, some notion that you can grab away from that and take that with you to be able to propel your business forward or whatever venture you're working on, then it's definitely kind of a worthwhile thing to be a part of, right? And so in looking at the tracks that they have this year, there's speakers talking about how they started and sold their startup. There's speakers talking about their experience with incubators, raising capital from angel investors, kind of tying into what Curling said before, right? And then a lot of other topics depending on what track you want to go down, right? If you want to have a more, take part in more like design-centered sessions or marketing, or even more technical things that maybe develop in the realm of development, or really kind of that advanced technologies realm. So there's a lot of fun talks, a lot of great speakers, and that's kind of a good way to look at it, and what you should expect from an event like this.
And what I put up, Steve, while you were talking, just so they can, people can understand some of what we call it tracks now. It's kind of like you can filter by, but things like customer discovery, right? Our customers, data, design, development. We have some marketing things on people. That's like HR. That's some of the things that I think like Vivian was saying, like, wow, what can I do with people I'm bringing in? Sales. So it's kind of color coded. This is kind of like the quote unquote schedule, right? I'll put the link out under the video. It's kind of like the San Diego startupweek.com/schedule, right? But I think even for some of our cohort and for other groups that I've been looking at their pitch decks, right? There's like Monday, this is a pitch feedback show, right? Which I think it's going to be really well. I'm actually going to go. I know Jonathan offhand. Or know that what these groups are going to do. So I think it's going to be pretty authentic. From pricing all the way to, I think this was interesting to me, was we were just talking about angels. Like, do you know what difference between angels and VCs? Well, there's kind of raising capital just for angels, right? Missy's going to be running that. Missy runs the USD program there called The Brink at USD. So I know it's going to be authentic. She's the one that actually created the Angel Conference in San Diego. So there's some really interesting, I think, talks that you've probably never even seen before. But the great thing is that this is all going to be somewhat curated. We usually have about 300 speakers at Startup Week, and then we moved down to about 100 speakers we were going to actually do, just to curate just people we knew are pretty authentic and that would have really good feedback for all of the founders, down to about 40. So we pretty much got the people we actually feel are really going to help. So this is the schedule offhand. I see Stevens. He's a recent active attendee. That's good call on that. And here's kind of like the schedule. I'll send some of those things out. But we do try to gear a lot to early stage, and then we do have this kind of middle stage to growth too. But one thing is like this, like kickstart your product build. This reason why I'm highlighting this is that me and Mike, this is Mike Roberts, he's part of San Diego Code School. He's actually really does a really great job with building products. He has this code school. And so I think this is going to be a great one for most people. I'm going to probably try to have people like Mike on Tech School, just offhand. But these are going to be really good sessions, I think. And it's going to be nice size, bite-sized sessions. And we're going to have, I believe the way things are going to happen, we'll have a library of some of the things later on that we'll actually have. But the way that some of the sessions are going to go and how we're going to facilitate is that people will go to the sessions, but we're going to give them extra time and in some ways to kind of network afterwards with other founders. I think I glossed over some of that, but we use this other platform called Run the World. So that at the end of sessions, we're going to try to have founders talk to each other. What did you think about that? Are you building such and such? Like, so we're going to try to have it still, even though in this virtual environment, somewhat, and this is actually more curling friendly, right? I'm better one-on-one than, a whole group of people. So, so you can see here like two founders talking. So we're going to try to understand how we can still help founders virtually, but still have some of that kind of community feel of it. So that's all I had for the kind of presentation part. I have some other questions that people were going to ask me, but I was going to open it up to other people or even our cohort if you guys had any questions offhand, and we're totally open to that, or you guys can shoot some on the chat if you want, but yeah, we can open up the questions. And Stephen, while we're waiting for questions or things of that nature, I do have a question offhand that I got for people, and this is just some other founders. How did you get part of Startup Week and became like a speaker offhand? Like, what was that process like?
Yeah, so I got the invitation to be a startup speaker through, of course, curling, and the people we knew kind of in that community. As far as the process of becoming a speaker, once they reached out to us, it was really easy. Went back and forth with a few of the coordinators who were planning the event on coordinating the time and how they wanted to structure that with then was the Startup Week schedule, right? So it was just all condensed within a week. Of course, now it's Startup Month, and so as you can see, the times and the schedules are put together to make them easier access for those tuning in, especially during weekdays where they might have other things going on. But as far as that process, it was very easy. They asked for what you kind of expect, right? A title, description, just kind of knowing what you were talking about, what kind of your intention was to, the things you wanted to go over in your talk, or if it was more of a Q&A session or whatever format that you had intended to do, or like curling was able to, be part of that panel, right? So that panel was more, Q&A kind of fireside with, a few important panelists, right? So some of them were different formatted last year, and curling would probably know, the formatting for this year, if a lot of them are, solo speakers or not. But as far as the process, it was fairly easy. They asked for the general information you'd expect. They worked with us to kind of hone in on, a title and description, right? To make it something that would be valuable to those tuning in, not just, a replication of another talk or, just to take advantage of some buzzwords and some general information that might not be as valuable, right? So they were very helpful in working through some of those things. And then this open line of communication with, scheduling and making sure all the speakers were prepared and ready to go, on the time and date that they were going to speak.
And then did they give you like a time limit or like slide limit? I know you had some slides too.
Yeah. So they went over, so the talk that I gave was, they had an hour slot. And so like kind of alluding to what Curling, the format that Curling was talking about earlier, they left a portion of that slot, maybe the last 15, 20 minutes for, Q&A if people wanted to chat afterwards, things like that, to add that component to the talk. So they had mentioned that the talk itself maybe go, 25, 30 minutes max, and then leave the rest for, Q&A at the end. So you'd, be up on stage, have the Q&A, and then afterwards, have some time if people wanted to talk to you afterwards, if you wanted to network with other people that attended the event and things like that. So they really kind of, allowed for flexibility in terms of the scheduling. And as far as resources they provided, they actually provided me with a template, with, San Diego Startup Week logos and all that stuff, and actually kind of an intro page and, end cards and things like that if you wanted to include those in your talk. So you didn't have to come up with, if you were using slides, for instance, you didn't have to come up with, okay, how am I going to format these? How am I going to structure it? They had kind of this bare bones, structure already ready for you to be able to use and kind of make it as easy as possible for you to just put your information out there and be ready to go.
I know you did your talk on kind of technical talk, machine learning, but I think it was really good because one, that's something in your background. Two, that was something that shows some authority on some things, right, through Fokcus and stuff like that. But the question I had for you too is like, how do you think that was like received offhand, right? You did more like a technical talk and things of that nature.
I had a lot of fun doing it. As Curling, you kind of attest to it. It's a lot of fun to do events like this. That was one of the biggest events I'd ever spoke at, or biggest groups of people. And so, of course, it was kind of nerve-wracking, right? You don't know what to expect. The feedback and the kind of welcomeness that I got from those that attended was great. There was a lot of great questions. I had a lot of people come up to me afterwards, chatting about the talk and things like that. As far as some of these talks go, they cover a lot of topics within HR, people, sales, marketing. There's a lot of talks like that. But the talks that go into more technical topics and like machine learning, for instance, and dive into, presenting it in a way that that can be useful for somebody who has no idea, what data science is, or doesn't have a machine learning background, or didn't study computer science, right? But wants to know how they can use that for their startup. There's a lot of talks like that on very technical topics that are very useful. And so a lot of those talks get a lot of great feedback because they allow somebody to, take part and learn about that stuff without having to, have the prior knowledge of having a degree in that field, right?
No, that's great. What I feel from it is, yes, it's going to any event, and I think I'm trying in some ways instill in the cohort and other people that it's really good to not be like a little Curling and not want to go to these things. Like forcing yourself to go to these things is actually probably the best thing for customer discovery, but also just to get some sort of feedback on what you're doing. I think I was talking to the cohort too about other groups too, like just have your 30 seconds ready, like at all points in time. You never know who you bump into or talk to. I would say even have like just the 10 seconds ready, just like, hey, this is what I do. Or we're like, like Airbnb for senior care, like something of that nature, like initially, and because you might be just waiting in line or something like that. So I think that's one tip I would actually say. If I'm saying one or two tips, the other tip I would say for any group, even for Startup Month or any group or conference you're going to, study what speakers that maybe you admire or you probably wanted to meet, right? So there's certain groups or certain people I always wanted to actually meet because they actually were doing something I admired, or doing something like was like something that I feel like, wow, they're doing like some great stuff. So I would just want to go listen to their speaking, and then also maybe see if I can get their card or understand how I can actually at least interact with them. Always the speakers will usually what they'll say is like, hey, this is how you get a hold of me, right? This is like an email, such and such. But it might even be as simple as just reach out to me on LinkedIn. But some of our speakers, like I told you, Lolita, I think everyone should try to reach out to Lolita. We'll see if we can get, but she's a good group. Definitely Ryan's here, who's local, head of Techstars Anywhere. Any group can actually apply to Techstars here. And of course, Alexa Ray, she's the head of Startup San Diego. I'm going to try to have her come and speak too, but Alexa was part of a group that was in LA for a while. It's called Bixel Exchange. They have a lot of small businesses there. So she knows the LA market and Silicon Valley too, as well as San Diego. And of course, Neil has been part of the startup ecosystem for a long time. He has this kind of fresh brewed tech. It's kind of like a newsletter. You guys all probably subscribe to it. It pretty much gives a little snapshot of what's going on in San Diego and in general, what's going on and who's getting seeded, who's actually getting, what the improvements that are going on with some of the San Diego startups, but also in general startups, just so you can have like kind of like I guess I would say like a pulse on kind of like the ecosystem of startups. So that fresh brewed tech is really, really great little resource but we'll try to have Neil come on and talk to. But the other speakers, actually, it's interesting. Some of these speakers I never even knew about. So I'm going to just go in there. Like I knew about Andy from GoFundMe, but I never heard him speak before. So I want to understand what his inspiration for GoFundMe and things of that nature. That helps me a lot. Fokcus was actually part of the San Diego, think of it this way, is the only accelerator was in an airport. Rick Belliati, who's right here, is a great resource for anyone, right? And I feel like in some ways, there's groups that might be listening, or even in our cohort, that their product could be maybe showcased at the airport. And we have some other people who've been part of our past cohorts, like Crystal Browning and Baggage Nanny. But I just say, do some research on speakers in general. I'm just giving you a blanket one of some people you admire, and see if you can go to those talks. That's for any conference, right? To just study a little bit on what you really need to know. I actually feel like for early stage startups, there's a couple of things I think you should really understand. I think I always tell you guys, planning. So if there's anything dealing with planning on like how you build something, like that's really crucial. Two, we always talked about execution. So if there's talks on here, if I go back to some of the things, if there's any talks on how you execute things, right? Like this is one by Brianna Asio, I think. It's like how to build a thriving company culture. I think that's really great early on, like especially since it was road. Like, so there's certain things on execution, maybe that could actually help. And lastly, I actually feel like storytelling is good. So there's going to be a couple groups on here. I say storytelling would be in these realms when it's actually dealing with pitching, right? That's kind of like your story, right? So things like pitch feedback show, there's going to be this pitch competition that I think I maybe showed you guys that. I think I have it here. There's an investor pitch competition. So these things are kind of like the storytelling I kind of want our cohort and other people to kind of know. So that, for early stage, focus on planning, of course, those type of things, execution, but also storytelling, these pitch competitions, just so you can understand how other founders are in some ways understanding that what they're doing is valuable for people, right? All you really want as a startup is have people in some ways love what you're doing for them, even if it's just 10 people, right? And so we do want most of our cohort, most of the people that are like listening to this, is to understand that you do have some value, but the way you present that is really important. And so I think that's what I have for everything. I told Steve I wanted it just to be just short and concise. If we got questions, we got some earlier questions from people too about like if they like I want to speak at startup school, so or at startup week. So I wanted Steven just to give his kind of honest feedback on what that looks like. Anything else, Steven, on that of you being a speaker?
Nothing specific. I mean, the big thing that I'd probably end with is something just to echo things that you've already said, which is, an event like this, if you can walk away with just, a singular idea, some notion, or maybe just some more knowledge on a technology that you can kind of take with you, that you can carry with you maybe for the next, year or two, or, through the life of your startup, your venture, as an entrepreneur, then it's super valuable to be able to attend an event like this. Not even mentioning, networking and connecting yourself with maybe experts in a certain field, right? You might want to learn more about sales, connecting with people who are experts in sales or marketing or, any area of your startup. But yeah, there's a lot of great things you can get from events like this, and especially it being a month long and all the great speakers that are speaking. So.
Yeah, and I don't know how we're going to do it this year with the shirts, but we're sporting our shirts from the previous year, me and Steven. It's actually funny when you're wearing your shirts, if people went there, they're like, oh yeah, like that's already a little connection too. So that's good. But that's all I have, Steven. I'll let you wrap it up.
Sure. But yeah, I think we covered a lot today. Currently got some great info, and we got to share a couple stories about our past San Diego Startup Weeks. That was great. Just to wrap things up, echoing the beginning of of our talk today. For those of you listening on YouTube or tuning in on YouTube Live, feel free to comment, subscribe. Interactions that we get with videos like this, likes, comments, and things like that, help push these videos out to more people. So that thumbs up that you gave us, that comment that you gave us, leaving your thoughts, and maybe sharing a question or two, allows those videos to reach more people. And so they might, just that like or that comment that you leave, might push it out to an entrepreneur or startup who really needs to hear that message, maybe in one of our tech school videos, or who didn't know about San Diego Startup Month and now attended because of what you did, and they got a lot out of it. So it's an easy way to give back to the community. But thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in a yeah.
I was thinking Sam's on. Sam, do you want any shout outs for Cal State San Marcos or anything?
Well, just for those on in the cohort, you should have received an email from Jill about how to access tickets to San Diego Startup Month. So that's available, but it's also available to other CSUSM students. So if you're interested in attending San Diego Startup Month and you watch the video here and want to get access to that, just email innovation@csusm.edu and see if there's a possibility. We have some tickets remaining to give out to students. So please come and join.
All right. Thanks, Sam.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Okay. Take care. And to the cohort, thanks for coming on early.
Hey everyone, Steven here with Fokcus. Thanks for tuning in today. If you liked the video today, be sure to hit that like button and give us a thumbs up. We really appreciate it. If you have thoughts and you'd love to share them, feel free to leave them in the comments section below. We love to hear from you guys. We're always looking for feedback on how we can improve and make our videos better, so feel free to leave a comment if you can. And if you'd like to be notified on future videos and future episodes of Tech School, feel free to hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and you'll be notified anytime we post a new video. But as always, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.